Last episode, we took on two of the most famous contradictions in the Bible. And they weren't contradictions at all. Genesis 1 and 2, you have a wide shot and you have a zoom. Judas's death, you have two witnesses, not two stories. But I ended that video with a question that stopped some of you dead in your tracks. The Bible says that no one has ever seen God. The Bible also says that Jacob saw God face to face. Same book, same God. How is that not a contradiction? Welcome to Gospel Grounded. My name is Webster, and I have the blessing, the honor, and the privilege of being your host for as long as God chooses to bless this ministry. Today, we are tackling Contradictions 3 and 4 in our series of the 5 most commonly cited contradictions that aren't really contradictions. If you haven't seen part 1, the link is in the description, but you can actually start right here. And today's resolution, it involves a wrestling match in the desert at midnight, a Hebrew phrase that changes everything, two family trees that look broken but are actually surgical, and the number 14. Let's get into it. Picture a man alone in the desert. His name is Jacob, and he's absolutely terrified. You see, 20 years ago, Jacob cheated his own brother out of his inheritance. He stole his father's blessing through deception, and then he ran for 20 years. He built a life in this foreign land. He got married twice, and he had 12 sons. He accumulated all of this wealth. But now, he's going home. And his brother Esau, the one that he cheated, is coming to meet him with 400 men. The night before they meet, Jacob, he sends everyone ahead of him, his wives, his children, his servants, his livestock, and he stays behind alone in the dark. And then someone grabs him, a figure in the darkness, and they wrestle all night long. Hour after hour, they're grappling, they're straining, they're fighting. Jacob won't let go, even when the figure dislocates Jacob's hip, and with a single touch. Jacob, he holds on. As dawn breaks, Jacob gasps, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And the figure blesses him. He gives him a new name. He calls him Israel, he who struggles with God. Jacob, he names that place Peniel, or Peniel. He says these words. He says, I have seen God face
and my
to
life has
face,
been preserved.
and my life has been preserved. But the Gospel of John says this. It says, no one has ever seen God. Then you look at Exodus 33:20, and then God himself says to Moses, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. So which is it? Can you see God or can't you? This brings us to our third reading error in this series, ignoring idioms and figurative language. You see, in English right now, as in today in 2026, if I told you that my boss and I had a face-to-face conversation, would you assume that we literally pressed our faces together? Of course not. It's an idiom. It means personally, it means directly, it means that we spoke up close, and Hebrew works the same way. Face to face, panim el panim, is a Hebrew idiom for intimate, direct, personal encounter. It doesn't mean saw the literal, physical face of God's full divine essence. It means that I met with God directly. And here's what's remarkable. This isn't even a hard one to see, because in Exodus 33, the same chapter, if you look at verse 11, it says that God spoke to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. Then just 9 verses later, the same chapter, the same author, verse 20, it says, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. And so the question I have for you is, do you seriously think that the author of Exodus contradicted himself within 9 verses of his own writing? Or is it far more likely that face to face in verse 11 means one thing, personal, direct communication, and my face in verse 20 means something completely different, the unveiled infinite glory of God. That's exactly what's happening here. Throughout the Bible, God, he appears to people in theophanies, visible manifestations. Think a burning bush, a pillar of cloud, a figure who wrestles Jacob in the night. And the prophet Hosea, writing centuries later, he identifies the figure as an angel. Hosea 12:4, it says, Jacob struggled with the angel and prevailed. These are God showing up in a form that humans can survive, but God's full, unveiled, unmediated glory. No human can endure that. Think of it this way. You can feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. You can look at the sunrise, but you cannot stare directly into the core of the sun itself. That would destroy you. And that's the difference. Jacob encountered God. Moses spoke with God intimately, but neither of them saw the unveiled, infinite essence of the Almighty. And that's what John 1:18 is talking about. So here's your takeaway. The Bible wasn't written in 21st century English. When something looks like a contradiction, check whether you're reading an idiom literally. This one skill will dissolve dozens of supposed contradictions overnight. Let's move on. Let me tell you about two men writing two books for two very different rooms of people. The first man is Matthew. We met him in our last episode. Matthew is a Jew writing to Jews. His readers, they're sitting in synagogues across Israel. They have one burning question about Jesus of Nazareth, and that's, is he really the promised Messiah? Does he have the right to sit on David's throne? And to answer this question, Matthew does what any Jewish writer would do. He opens the book with a genealogy, a royal pedigree, if you will. He traces Jesus's legal lineage through Joseph, through King Solomon, all the way back to Abraham. It's structured in three groups of 14 generations. And it's not just a family tree, it's a theological argument woven into very numbers. You see, 14 is the numerical value of the name David in Hebrew. Dalet, Vav, Dalet. 464. And Matthew is saying, David, 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 this is the king. The second man, we also met him in our last episode, Luke. Luke is a Greek physician writing to a Gentile audience, and his reader is a man named Theophilus. He was likely a Roman official somewhere in the province. And Theophilus, he doesn't really care about the throne of Israel. He just wants to know, what does this Jesus mean for all of humanity? And so Luke also gives a genealogy, but his starts at Jesus and goes the other direction. He goes all the way back past Abraham, past Noah, and all the way to Adam, the son of God. Luke's point isn't royal lineage, it's universal lineage. Jesus, he belongs to everyone. And here's where the contradiction comes in. When you put the two genealogies side by side, from King David onwards, they're almost completely different. You have different names, you have different paths. Matthew says Joseph's father was Jacob. Luke says Joseph's father was Heli. You have two different grandfathers for Jesus. And that brings us to our fourth reading error in this series, ignoring the author's purpose and audience. You see, the explanation that the church has held since the earliest centuries is quite elegant. Matthew, he traces Joseph's line, while Luke traces Mary's. And think about it. Matthew, he's writing to Jews about Jesus's legal right to the throne. He gives you the royal succession through Joseph, Jesus's legal father, and through Solomon's line. While Luke, he spends more time on Mary than any other gospel writer. He gives us Gabriel's conversation with Mary. He gives us Mary's song. He tells us the birth story entirely from Mary's perspective. He gives us her lineage through Nathan, another son of David, back to David, back to Adam, and back to God. But wait, you say, Luke 3:23. You need to look at that, because he says that Joseph was the son of Heli, not Mary. And here's the cultural context. You see, in Jewish practice, a son-in-law could be called the son of his father-in-law. In other words, there was no word for son-in-law in the way that we use it today. Heli was Mary's father. Joseph, by marrying Mary, became son of Heli in the eyes of the community. And here's what's stunning about this. Rather than being a contradiction, these two genealogies together accomplish something that neither of them could do alone. You see, through Joseph and Solomon's line, Jesus has the legal right to the throne of David, while as through Mary and Nathan's line, Jesus has the biological descendant from David. He is both the legal heir and the physical descendant. The prophecy with the two genealogies is fulfilled from two directions simultaneously. And that, my friend, that's not a contradiction. That's actually surgical prophetic precision. And so here's your takeaway. Before you call something a contradiction, ask who the author is writing to and why. You see, Matthew wrote to Jews, Luke wrote to Gentiles, and they told the same truth from two angles because they were serving two audiences. And that's just good communication, not bad consistency. Okay, so that's 4 down. 4 contradictions resolved. 4 reading errors completely exposed. And here's the thing, we haven't needed blind faith or hand waving for a single one of them. We've just needed better reading. But there's one more, and it's actually the biggest one of all. You see, it's not about a single verse or a single story. It's actually about the entire character of God. The God of the Old Testament is a God of wrath, they say, and the God of the New Testament is a God of love. People say that these are 2 different gods. I know you've heard that, and maybe you've even felt it. In our next episode, I'm going to show you why that's not just wrong, but it's the most dangerous reading error of all 5. And I'm actually going to show you where wrath and love finally, perfectly, completely converge. It happens at the cross. And that's going to be the finale. Don't miss it. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you in our next episode. I'm Webster, and until next time, stay grounded. God bless you.